Hello. What kind of magic was used in Viking societies? Well, I wanted to find that out for myself, so I decided to make a video about it. You may have heard of the Fates in Greek mythology, but what about the Nordic counterparts in Norse mythology? In this video, I'm going to dive into seidr, a kind of magic that was practiced by the Völva, the witches of the Viking Age, and how that magic relates to the Norns, these characters that were so powerful that even Odin himself had to submit to their power. Let's dive in. Magic is all around us. It is in what decides that wood should be pliable, but rock not so much. It decides the weather today, that some days time should move quickly, and others time seems elastic, stretching forever. These are things out of our control, but for us to make use of. Wood is better for certain things, stone for others. We can complain about the weather, or we can adapt to it. We can worry about the amount of time still in our allocated cup, or accept that some plans are too big for our time. Free will exists, but we navigate established laws. In Norse mythology, these laws were woven and carved by the Nornir, the Fates, and not even Odin and his fellow gods could change what was already decided. The Viking Age, as we generally think of it, roughly lasted between the 900s and the 1200s. The culture stretched across several countries and centuries, so nailing down specifics is going to be difficult. Basically, we can assume that there has been a great variety between beliefs and attitudes, even if we just hone in on the Vikings that lived in today's Sweden. Across 300 years, a lot will happen. Viking settlements began in what we today define as Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. And there would, of course, be, a lot of cultural exchange between Finland, the Baltics, Poland, Germany. Not so strange considering we share a sea. And now a lot of you might go, wait, why didn't you mention Finland along with Scandinavia or Iceland? Finland technically is its own culture and language, but critically, what defines Scandinavia is the mountain range that has formed the Scandinavian peninsula. So even if Finland indeed has Swedish as a recognized national language, it is more due to the fact that, we've both belonged to each other at some point in history. We've been neighbors for a very long time. And what about Iceland? Well, it isn't part of the geographical Scandinavia, but culturally and linguistically, it is considered Scandinavian. So Iceland began with Norwegians and later other Scandinavians settling there from around the 800s. Viking culture began developing there towards the later part of the Viking Age, almost around the time the main Viking society in Scandinavia was being phased out due to Christianity. But, however, it is thanks to Icelandic Vikings that we know so much, mostly thanks to Icelandic Vikings anyway, because those remains are younger and a lot more has survived. Also, thanks to Icelandic writers of the era, from around the 1200s, I think, who decided to keep record of Viking history and mythology, the things that traditionally would have been spread word of mouth. Texts like Snorri Sturluson's Edda. It's thanks to this that we know so much about the pantheon and mythology and other texts like this. And I can keep going about this kind of history, but that's not why we're here. We are here to discuss Viking magic. In Viking society, a practitioner of magic was usually a woman, and she was called a völva or vala. She could be revered and she could be feared. And that depends a lot on the particular society that she participated in and whether or not her magic had been successful and a bunch of other things. People have different opinions in different towns and settlements. It's very depending on the place. Viking society was very much built on mutual trust. And the spoken word itself held a lot of weight. It may have even been considered its own form of magic. You speak something into truth or existence. From what I gather, the most common magic was seidr. I'm using the Swedish word. There are variations of this, dialects, and there are different words that indicate another kind of magic, if you will. Magic in itself is a Wiccan word, belongs to a different belief system and culture altogether. So the idea of magic, usually today accepted idea of magic, comes from a different culture. So we have to remove our modern goggles for this. So what was seidr? You can say that it was a form of divination, reading signs in nature or trying to connect with the spirit realm or the gods to divine what fate is awaiting. The vulva might have assistants, and it seems from what I can tell that they usually inherited the occupation and the knowledge. So an established vulva could get help from their daughters and sons. I say sons because it did happen that a man might practice seidr if he had the sight, but they were called seidr men. Traditionally, it was an ergi, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but taboo to participate in this feminine magic. In the poetic Edda, so not this one, another Edda, not the one by Snorri Sturluson, passage mentions the dance of the vulva to be an unmanly practice. Instead, men could practice rune magic because that was associated with Odin, or gald, which was a form of conjuring that involved singing. You sang traditional songs to conjure things. The most common is the seidr, and that was practiced by vulva. So, to understand seidr, we need to learn about the Norns. The three most famous Nornir who work on the web or the fabric of the cosmos are named Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld. Urd is the oldest and handles the past. It's primarily she who works with the spinning of the thread of life, and she is the one who determines how long a life is. She cuts the thread with her scissors, and there a life ends. The name Urd is the Old Norse past tense of being, so her name roughly translates to that which was. Second, we have Verdandi. She is the most beautiful and represents the present. Her name is the present tense of Urd, the same root as Urd, and translates vaguely to happening, that which is happening. Finally, we have Skuld, the third one, and she handles that which is to come. And as you may have guessed, her name has a different root meaning than the others, and that is obligation. And in today's Swedish, skuld literally means debt. So what the Norner decides is predetermined, it is fixed, it is an obligation. Even the gods submit to this power. The Norner live by Urd's well, which is located at the roots of Yggdrasil, specifically in Asgard. And Yggdrasil, in case you didn't know, is the world tree, which connects all of the realms, and there are 9 realms in this mythology. And the Norner mix the water from this well with clay that they find around it, and use this mixture on the roots of the tree to make it grow strong and healthy. So the Nornir function is not just to decide the world cosmos, but to feed or nurture the worlds within it through the tree of Yggdrasil. Something I found really interesting when I was reading about this is that the fabric of existence that is woven by the main 3 Nornir, specifically Urd, this fabric will eventually fall away and pour back as water into the well. So when you think about it, the tree of life is literally being nourished by past events. And I find that's a really nice way of looking at ourselves and our world as forever tied to and determined by our history. So the Nornir also carve runes into the trunk of the world tree as a way of making their decisions come true. Runes are not just a written language, they are a manifestation of ideas. So same as speaking holds its own form of magic and weight, runes are irreversible, its own form of bringing into existence. In later art, the Norns have often been depicted with weaving tools, such as spindles and threads and looms, but that isn't their only attributes, obviously. The work that they undertake is very varied and incredibly important when you think about the cosmos. I mean, they even stand above the gods in hierarchy. So the idea of them, or the image of them spinning thread, may have been enhanced by or conflated with the Greek fates, whose magic seems to be more flexible than the Nornir, and even Zeus seemed to be able to argue with the fates in the Greek mythology. With Odin, he cannot, and he wouldn't, because the Norns are simply too respected in this world. An important thing to differentiate. And now, to complicate things even further, there are more Norns, or Nornir, than the main three. Nornir isn't actually a race or Vasen. It's more a kind of occupation in like the cosmos of Yggdrasil. There are thousands of subordinate Nornir helping the main three accomplish the work that they undertake. And they come from different races. There are Asar, like the Asgardians, elves, and dwarves. And what I read here is specifically from the line of Dvalin, which is one of the 4 dwarves who created the goddess Freya's very famous necklace pendant. Although when I think about it, it might just be, like, I'm not sure if it's just his descendants that can become Nornir, or if it's a sort of phrasing that means his kin, any dwarf from any family, to participate in the Nornir occupation, but it is specifically mentioned as from the line of Dvalin, so take it with a grain of salt. But I thought it was interesting. Maybe an especially noble dwarf family is allowed to do this work. So, when a child is born, one of these underling Norns visit the child to help determine its fate. You know, there may be good Norns from a good upbringing who might give the child a happy and long life. They report back to the main three, and then they make the decision. But then there may also be a mean Norn who spitefully decides to give the child a poor or difficult life. Then they report back, and the main three make the decisions. Whether or not this last part is more a kind of superstition than mythological canon, I'm not sure. You can imagine that if you're bad, maybe a mean Norn will spite your child or whatever. But it is a way for the Vikings to explain the seemingly random nature of luck and fortune. So, what kind of magic can actually be done if everything is predetermined? Archaeological evidence and literary sources suggest that Scandinavians made offerings to the Norns and sought their favor, and through rituals of divination tried to learn the decree of the Norns. And although it would have been severely frowned upon, some Völva or Vala might have wanted to manipulate or try to manipulate the threads of the cosmos. So, in short, seidr is a way to navigate what the Norns have decided. So you may try to reach the spirit world or the gods in different ways to get advice or get a glimpse of the future. Seidr as a practice was introduced to the Midgardians, the humans, us, from Freya, who I only recently found out is not originally an Asgardian, like Odin or Thor or Frigg, for example. But Freya and her brother Frey are both Vanir, so from a different race altogether. It is suggested that historically the Vanir belong to an even older religious or spiritual practice than the Norse mythological pantheon. Seidr was an even older practice than even in Viking age, it was known as an old practice. Freya is the goddess of love, sex, war, and of course, seidr. And there's an interesting story about Odin being interested in magic himself as the king of the gods and a representation of wisdom and seeking wisdom. In general, Odin's role seemed to be about curiosity and learning, a thirst for knowledge that is borderline obsessive. But I think I will do a separate video about Odin and rune magic. So if that's interesting to you, keep an eye out for that. So now I've already touched on the practice of seidr a little bit. Here come some examples of potential rituals. I say potential because we simply cannot know for 100% exactly what these rituals would have been. As I said, the practice was usually handed down. And, with the influence of Christianity, it transformed into a folk practice, a folk magic, later then bordered on the superstition or became a superstitious idea, becomes feared or taboo, something that you practice in secret. As with a lot of other things, it eventually is influenced by other folk magic and practices like Wicca and Slavic magic. A lot of the Viking rituals that you can find online, for example, are heavily influenced by the Wicca format. I guess the idea of magic that we have today is very influenced by that practice. And the songs that the Vulva would sing in their rituals have been forgotten. So the practice involved getting in touch with the spirit world, potentially finding a guide or a god or vasen to communicate with and to ask for aid or for signs. The Vulva would wield a staff, which we have later come to call a wand. It wasn't called that at the time. It could have been called a gand or a gandar. That's a little bit strange because there's also some suggestion saying that a gandar was a malicious creature of some kind. I think something that possessed you. I haven't studied that section yet because I've been focusing on the Norns, just to clarify. Some think that the wand was a sort of spindle for thread weaving. Spindle-looking sticks have been found in Viking graves, in female graves, along with other shamanic objects, like hallucinogenic plants. It is believed that Vulva would sing, chant, kula, or do a yoik-style call. The ritual might include a choir of women singing to help the vulva sustain a trance-like state. She might consume hallucinogenic plants, as I mentioned, to sustain the trance. She might be on a raised platform or podium or stone so as to be closer to the spirits or to symbolize Yggdrasil. Were mostly about navigating the layers and intricacies of the world, and divination was used to understand how the board was set, I guess. Finding ills, understanding the root cause of a sickness, for example. The function wasn't necessarily to alter or to heal, but more to understand and prepare. As I mentioned, there was a lot of shame in trying to manipulate people or breaking oaths, because in Viking society, participating within society was regarded as a sort of oath. You are honor bound to contribute to your fellow people. There surely were vulva or seidr men who did attempt to curse or manipulate, and there surely were settlements where magic was looked down upon. It's hard to generalize and say which stance was more common, if people mostly were pro-seidr or anti-seidr. It's just like how skirts, like the length of skirts, come in and out of fashion, and trust in political leadership fluctuates. Something that we can all relate to. Another ritual that I have seen that some people still practice in the countryside, here in Sweden, for example, is utesittning, which translates to outside sitting. And it is when you go out into nature and meditate through the night. It's not necessarily that it's frowned upon, but it's also not necessarily socially accepted thing to do. Swedish culture today generally is very science and logic based. So going outside to look for signs in nature where, you might be cold or get sick or hurt in other ways, it can seem like self-harm. So most people today will find that strange. But still, there are people today who do practice utesitting in order to feel close to nature, or maybe in the hopes of getting an epiphany or something like that. So now let's look at Norns and the fate in everyday life. As I mentioned, people would bring gifts, offerings to the Norns in hopes of winning their favor. And that also persisted into like the conversion to Christianity for a bit at least, and in some places. Like with everything, it's like I can't say to 100% that that's how it worked. Yeah, there are runic inscriptions that from the Viking age that invoke the Norns. One inscription in a stave church in Norway reads, "The Norns did both good and evil." This is obviously a church. It's after the Christianization of Scandinavia. It suggests that the Norns persisted even after conversion to Christianity. Dreams were also considered important. Nornen might appear in dreams to warn of future events or reveal hidden truths. Warriors going into battle might receive dream visions that told them whether they would live or die. And a pregnant woman might get warnings about birth, important things to remember about the child's life or upbringing. And yeah, these visions and dreams were treated as reliable information, as long as you understood it correctly. You visit the roots of the old ash tree where the old well still is. 3 women sit beside it. One looks away from you, into the past. One looks you directly in the eye, seeing everything in the present moment. And one looks into the distance, seeing everything that is to come, everything that must be. They are carving, and though you cannot read the runes, they will shape your world and everything in it. You cannot change it, you can only face it. What the women offer is clarity. Your fate isn't random. It flows from everything that came before and connects to everything that shall be. The best you can do is face it with courage and know that your thread, however short or long, is woven into the great tapestry of existence. Again, I have a lot more ideas, material for more videos about Norse mythology, and I hope you find it interesting and will want to see more of it. Yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you back here soon. Take care.